I accidentally took my boyfriend's phone and saw a message his ex had just sent about that night. I didn't take the pill, just a few words, yet they made my entire body turn cold. The night before last, I suddenly had acute gastroenteritis. He was working overtime at the company. I called him more than a dozen times, but none went through. Enduring the piercing pain, at 3 in the morning, I took a taxi to the hospital alone, so that was why his phone was off. Why he disappeared and didn't come home all night. He had gone to see his ex. Chapter 1. Today was the night before my wedding with Santino. His ex, Rosie, insisted on tagging along with a group of their old classmates to come congratulate us. The moment I pushed the door open, I saw Rosie rise onto her tiptoes and press her lips against Santino's. Santino didn't push her away. In fact, when she almost lost her balance, he reached out and held her by the waist. A gentle, intimate gesture, completely different from the cold distance he had shown me these past few days. Around them, his old classmates cheered and egged them on, as if they were already used to scenes like this, casual, practiced, natural. The noise was piercing, like a hand tightening around my throat, making it hard for me to breathe. "Grace?" Someone called out when they saw me walk in. A single abrupt sentence. It not only separated the two of them, but also made everyone in the room turn toward me all at once. "Ah!" Rosie let out an exaggerated gasp. She hurried over to me, a blush still lingering on her face. We were just playing truth or dare, and Santino and I lost. Don't misunderstand. I stared at her in disbelief. Earlier, I had stepped out for something. On my way back, I suddenly received a friend request on WeChat. It was Rosie. The moment I accepted, she immediately sent me an intimate photo of her and Santino. "Guess what we're doing right now?" Then she unsent it within seconds, and casually followed up with, "Happy wedding." Now, she was explaining everything so openly, as if she hadn't been the one sending me that provocative message. Instead, it made me look like the one overreacting, the unreasonable one. Chapter 2. As if afraid I didn't believe her, Rosie suddenly grabbed my wrist. About to say more, I shook her off forcefully. She staggered back a few steps, and by sheer coincidence, fell right into Santino's waiting arms. It was raining outside. My shoes were damp, and I slipped, crashing into the table beside me. My phone fell to the ground and slid several meters away. The sound wasn't loud, yet it instantly silenced the entire room. Someone picked up my phone and quietly placed it on the table. Only then did Santino seem to snap back to his senses. He hurried over to help me up. I found it almost laughable. Forcing myself to stand, I avoided his touch. Taking a deep breath, I stared at him and asked, "Santino, if I told you she just texted me to provoke me, saying, 'Grace, it was just a game.'" Santino cut me off. His tone was as calm as ever, but the impatience in his expression was unmistakable. I froze. A burning sensation spread from my ankle to my brain, gradually seeping into every nerve. Only then did the delayed pain and humiliation hit me all at once. I couldn't stay there any longer. Grabbing my phone, I turned and ran toward the restroom. Chapter 3. I turned on the faucet and splashed water onto my face. The bone-chilling cold spread through my entire body. Suddenly, my phone vibrated. It showed a message from Rosie, but I hadn't even saved her contact. I froze for a few seconds before realizing, in my rush earlier, I had taken Santino's phone by mistake. By the time it sank in, I had already unconsciously opened the chat between Santino and Rosie. Rosie had sent a single message. About that night, afterward, I forgot to take the pill. Just a few words, yet they made my whole body go ice cold. So, while I was running around nonstop, overwhelmed with all the wedding preparations, they slept together? The overhead light reflected off the phone screen, making it hard to see clearly. At the same time, memories slowly surfaced. The day before yesterday, after work, I skipped dinner and went straight to the hotel to handle wedding arrangements. I stayed busy until very late, then my gastroenteritis suddenly flared up. Santino said he was working overtime at the company. I called him more than a dozen times, but couldn't reach him. Enduring the piercing pain, at 3 in the morning, I took a taxi to the hospital alone. So that was the truth. His phone being off, his complete disappearance, not coming home all night. He had gone to her. Chapter 4. My heart ached as if it were being violently torn apart. I didn't even know how I managed to keep reading. When I scrolled to a certain part of the chat history, my fingers froze. A week ago, Rosie had sent him a picture of a ragdoll cat. "Our son is getting cuter and cuter, haha." He replied with a simple Then he changed his lock screen to the ragdoll cat they used to raise together. My mind went completely blank. I didn't even notice someone approaching until the phone was suddenly snatched from my hands. Santino looked at me with a dark expression, his voice turning colder. "Did you take the wrong phone on purpose?" I looked into those familiar yet strangely distant eyes. The tension I had been holding onto finally snapped. "And you? Aren't you going to explain? You said that kiss just now was a game, then what about these messages? And this lock screen? It used to be a photo of Roundy. Why did you change it to the picture she sent you?" I pointed at his phone, my voice trembling, almost hoarse. The truth was right there in front of me, yet I still wanted to hear him explain. But he said nothing. He simply turned off the screen and looked at me expressionlessly. He had always been good at staying silent. Chapter 5. Back then, Santino had pursued me for a long time. The reason I finally agreed to be with him was Roundy. My parents divorced when I was very young. I was raised by my grandmother. A few years ago, she passed away and left Roundy to me, saying it would stay by my side in her place. That night, I went out to walk the dog. In just a moment of carelessness, Roundy got lost. I searched almost the entire park. In the end, exhausted, I collapsed onto the ground, hugging my knees and crying in despair. The one who finally helped me find Roundy was Santino. At the time, he was holding the puppy, out of breath, yet spoke as if it were nothing. "When I was jogging just now, I saw a man carrying Roundy, walking in a hurry, probably a dog trafficker." I felt both relieved and terrified at the same time. Tears kept streaming down my face. "Don't cry." Santino, who usually cared a lot about cleanliness, didn't even mind sitting down beside me on the concrete ground. He stayed silent for a while, then let out a soft sigh. "When you cry, I don't know what to do." The moonlight fell on the side of his face as he looked at me, his eyes gentle and sincere. "Roundy will always stay by your side, and so will I." After that night, we got together. We dated for 3 years. Santino treated me well. Everything couples usually do, we did it too. Until 2 months ago, when I accepted his proposal. His college first love, Rosie, suddenly reappeared. At the beginning, it wasn't that I hadn't been worried. To reassure me, whenever Rosie called him or went to see him at his company, Santino would report it to me. He tried very hard, through his actions, to show me that things with her were truly over. But now, seeing them kiss, seeing him replace Roundy's photo, I finally realized that Santino had never forgotten her. I knew I shouldn't cry, but my tears wouldn't stop. They fell one after another, until I was sobbing so hard I could barely breathe, my whole body trembling. Santino stayed silent for a long time before suddenly saying, "You probably don't realize this, but seeing you cry like this, I feel nothing at all." His tone was flat, calmly stating the fact that he no longer loved me. At that moment, my world completely collapsed. Chapter 6. I don't know how long had passed when I received a voice message from my best friend. She said she already knew what had just happened, even through the screen. I could feel the deep guilt in her voice. I froze for a few seconds before it clicked. Back then, my best friend and I went hiking. On the way back, we couldn't get a taxi, so she asked her brother to pick us up. She came from a blended family. Her brother had been living abroad for years and had just returned to the country at the time, so I had never met him. But the call didn't go through. With no other option, she contacted Santino, who happened to be nearby on a business trip. That was how Santino and I met. Maybe that was why she felt so guilty. Right after that, she sent another message. "Don't move. We're coming to the hotel to pick you up." I didn't have the energy to think carefully about that word "we." After splashing my face again, I stood up and prepared to leave. When I turned around, I realized Rosie had come out at some point. She stood behind Santino, quietly looking at me. The pity in her eyes was obvious, and beneath it, a faint trace of mockery and disdain. Chapter 7. That look. I knew it all too well. Over the past 2 months, during the countless coincidental encounters she had deliberately created, she had looked at me with that same subtle yet unmistakable expression. At the time, I couldn't understand it. Santino's attitude toward her had been so cold, almost indifferent, so how could she be so certain, so confident that she would win him back? Until a month ago, when Santino took me to meet his parents for the first time. As his mother served me food, she accidentally called me by Rosie's name, and she didn't even notice her slip. "Rosie, the fish is very fresh. Have some more," she said warmly. My hands trembled so badly I couldn't even hold my chopsticks. At that moment, his mother's kind gaze overlapped with the way Rosie looked at me. Back in the room, Santino immediately hugged me from behind, his tone sincere. "My mom is getting old. Her memory isn't great. She just said it out of habit. Can you forgive her?" I only asked him one question. "Rosie has come to you again and again, lowering herself every time. Have you ever wavered?" He was silent for a long time. Finally, slowly and firmly, he said in my ear, "My wife. Right now, the only person in my heart is you." The calmness and helplessness in his voice made it impossible for me to doubt him any further. But that entire night, we didn't say another word. He even slept in the study, saying he had work to deal with. Chapter 8. My thoughts returned to the present. I stared blankly at the two people in front of me. The pain of betrayal, of being torn apart, had been growing bit by bit during everything that had just happened. Now, fueled by all the details I had once ignored, it surged wildly, uncontrollably. Santino was my first love, the only person I had ever wanted to spend my life with in all my 20-something years. But I was never that person for him, not in any sense. The only one he had ever truly wanted was Rosie. As I walked past Santino, I suppressed the sorrow inside me, forcing myself to sound calm. "The wedding tomorrow is cancelled. When we get back tonight, we'll explain everything clearly to our parents. Luckily, we haven't registered the marriage yet, they should understand." Without waiting for his response, I left. Only after stepping out of the hotel did I realize the rain hadn't stopped. A hazy mist lingered in the air, blurring everything. The night was growing darker, and the cold seeped relentlessly into my body. I glanced at my phone. I didn't even know what I was hoping for. There were no messages. Suddenly, an umbrella appeared above my head, shielding me from the gloomy sky. The hand holding it was pale, with long, slender fingers. I froze for a moment, thinking it was my best friend, Ollie. But when I met those dark eyes, I swallowed the rest of the name. Boris? Perhaps because he tilted the umbrella slightly toward me. His hair was a little damp. He looked down at me and replied calmly, "Alicia is in the car." I was slightly stunned. Although Boris was Alicia's brother, we barely had any interaction, at most. We were acquaintances who exchanged nods. I didn't expect him to come with her to pick me up. Just as I was about to speak, I suddenly felt a cold gaze from behind. Instinctively, I turned around. Santino stood at the hotel entrance, expressionless, watching us. Chapter 9. I calmly withdrew my gaze and followed Boris into the car. The moment I sat down, my phone rang. It was my mom. "Santi already told me. It's such a small matter. If you say you're not getting married, then you're not getting married? Do you have to drive me to death before you're satisfied?" From the front seat, the sound of the engine starting suddenly broke the air. Boris had his hands on the steering wheel. Under the dim light, his usually indifferent face looked inexplicably cold. My mom paused on the other end, as if suppressing her anger. "Come back to your dad's place. We'll talk there." Then she hung up. "Your mom." Alicia held my cold hand, her expression complicated. I stayed silent for a moment, then gave a faint, calm smile. "I'm used to it. Ever since my parents remarried and started their own families. My mom had another son, and my dad had a daughter. I had long gotten used to their indifference and neglect." On the way, I learned from my best friend that she had been having dinner with Boris at a nearby restaurant earlier, which was why they came together. Then she added, as if unintentionally, "My brother actually insisted on coming." When we arrived at my dad's place, it was still early. My mom sat on the sofa with a dark expression, while my dad sat across from her. smoking. His current wife and daughter weren't there, probably avoiding the situation. Hearing me come in, my mom let out a cold snort and spoke in a sarcastic tone to my dad. Breaking off a wedding over a game, well, she is your daughter. After all. My dad ignored her, stubbed out his cigarette, and asked me, "Have you made up your mind?" I nodded firmly. Yes, I'll take responsibility for everything. I don't agree. My mom finally exploded, jumping to her feet and pointing at me as she lashed out. The invitations have already been sent to all our relatives and friends, and now you're saying the wedding is off. If I'd known you'd embarrass me like this, I shouldn't have given birth to you in the first place. Even though I had been prepared, those words still stabbed deep into my heart. Mom, it's not just a game. I found their chat history on Santino's phone. I looked straight at her, speaking word by word. The night before last, they slept together. My mom froze for a moment. A flicker of surprise crossed her eyes, but she quickly said with certainty, "That's impossible. Santi is such a good kid. He even agreed just now to help your brother find a job. He would never do something like that." I stared at her in disbelief, my breathing almost stopping. She seemed to realize what she had just said. Her lips moved as if she wanted to explain, but no words came out. Enough! My dad suddenly raised his voice, sounding impatient. The child has already made her decision. Oh, now you're playing the good guy? My mom sneered, as if she had found an outlet for her anger. When she was 5, we got divorced, and the court gave you custody. But what did you do? You dumped her with your mother in the countryside and remarried right away. Later, when her grandmother passed away, you had no choice but to bring her back. And just because that dog her grandma left her barked at your daughter a few times, you wanted to sell it, forcing her to move out. She pointed at the family photo of 3 hanging on the wall, her tone bitter and reckless. Tell me, ever since your daughter was born, have you ever still considered her your daughter? My dad looked like something had hit a nerve. His eyes turned red with anger. Yet he didn't deny it. And what right do you have to criticize me? Aren't you the same, only doting on your precious son? They kept exposing each other's faults, not even noticing that I had already returned to the guest room. There was no room in this house that truly belonged to me. But because the wedding was supposed to start from the bride's side, my dad had specially prepared a temporary guest room for me. The room was silent, filled only with the sound of my breathing. Then my phone buzzed abruptly. "Rosie, we're going to karaoke now. Want to come?" Right after, she sent a photo of them at a KTV. In the picture, Rosie held a microphone, the corners of her lips slightly curved as she gazed at Santino, who was sitting on the sofa. The lighting around him was dim, making his expression unclear, but I could imagine it, affectionate. Content. The two of them looked at each other from a distance, while the old classmates around them seemed to fade into the background. On the screen, a classic old song was playing. I still want to love you again. No more emptiness. No more letting memories fill the future. I want tomorrow to hold hope again. To fall in love once more. I thought I would cry. But strangely, at that moment, I felt incredibly calm. Calmly, I blocked Rosie. Calmly, I called each guest one by one to inform them that the wedding was cancelled. After notifying the last person, Santino suddenly called. There was noise in the background on his end. He was silent for a long time before speaking, his voice colder than ever. Are you serious? Chapter 10. I didn't want to say anything more to him. I replied with a faint and hung up. Just as I was about to turn off my phone, I received a message from Boris. Don't forget to apply medicine to your ankle. I froze for a long time. When I fell at the hotel earlier, my ankle had scraped against the table. The wound wasn't shallow, but I had endured it the entire way. Santino didn't notice. My parents didn't notice either. I didn't expect that he would. The room was filled with miscellaneous items. I searched through a drawer and actually found a first aid kit. Maybe it was because of Boris's message, but when I treated the wound, I found myself being unusually careful, so much so that I didn't even hear someone knocking on the door. It was Santino. The cotton swab and ointment fell to the ground with a soft snap. My mom stood behind him, turning her head away to avoid my disbelieving gaze. I still don't believe Santi would do anything to betray you. Since he's here, you two should talk it out. The door was quickly closed, leaving only Santino and me in the room. His gaze fell on my ankle, his tone slightly unnatural. Did you get hurt when you fell earlier? His hand rested on the back of mine, his voice soft. I'm sorry, I didn't notice just now. The warm, damp touch made me stiffen instantly, almost instinctively. I pulled my hand away. Leave. Perhaps my attitude was too cold. Santino seemed momentarily at a loss, but quickly regained his composure. Grace, marriage isn't a joke. Won't you even give me a chance to explain? Explain? I looked at him, suddenly feeling like laughing. What exactly are you going to explain? Santino? Explain why you didn't push Rosie away when she kissed you? Or explain why you didn't answer my calls the night before last? Why you left me to go find her? Grace. She and I. When I most wanted to hear your explanation, you chose silence. I cut him off. A delayed apology and explanation meant nothing. Santino was clearly taken aback. Grace. Whether you believe it or not, things between her and me are not what you think. I looked at him without speaking. Recently, a major project at my company ran into serious problems. The night before last, I was in meetings almost the entire night. I left my phone in the office, and there was a power outage. It shut down. I didn't ignore your calls on purpose, and I didn't go to see her. As for what happened at the hotel, one of my classmates borrowed my phone for a while. The lock screen was probably changed then, and later. We took the wrong phones. I don't know what she sent you. He paused for a moment. When I checked, it only showed that she had unsent a message. I froze. Rosie had done something like that before. Because of the project, and all the wedding preparations, I haven't been in a good state these past few days. I treated you badly. It was my fault. He tugged at his tie, a faint trace of regret in his eyes. And when those people started making a scene, my mind got even more chaotic. I don't even know why. I just forgot to push her away. But hearing his explanations now, I only felt exhausted. Grace. There's really no possibility between me and her anymore. Santino cautiously placed his hand over mine again. After about 2 seconds of silence, I pulled my hand away. Santino. Just because you and her didn't actually sleep together doesn't mean it isn't a betrayal. It doesn't mean I can pretend nothing ever happened. Coldness and silence are knives too. The damage they've done to me, you can brush it off lightly. But I can't. You probably don't even realize. I clenched my hand, forcing myself to steady my breathing before speaking with difficulty. How gentle you look when you're with her. Santino froze. He had probably forgotten, whether it was said impulsively or not. He had told me himself that when I cried, he felt nothing at all. He seemed about to say something more, but I cut him off coldly. If you're not leaving, then I will. With that, I walked straight to the door and left. Behind me, Santino's voice came, slightly hoarse. Don't go. Chapter 11. I didn't expect to see Boris in the living room downstairs. He was sitting on the sofa, casually scrolling through his phone. A tube of ointment lay on the table in front of him. When he noticed me, Boris said with a hint of helplessness, Alicia got really worried when she heard you were hurt. She asked me to bring this over for you. I froze for a moment, then couldn't help but smile. I was about to explain that I had already applied medicine when I suddenly felt a gaze from the side, half amused, half mocking. Rosie was there too. How did she even find my house? She walked slowly toward me, a smile on her face that revealed nothing of her true emotions. Oh, you seem to be in a pretty good mood. Made up with Santino already? I smiled back, raising an eyebrow, my words carrying a hint of meaning. What do you think two people would do after staying in a room together for that long? Rosie froze for a moment. She probably imagined something, because she shot me a furious glare. At first, I thought, after being provoked by her so many times, I'd return the favor just once. But seeing her expression grow uglier and uglier, I suddenly found it all meaningless. Santino walked out as well. Why are you still here? That was clearly directed at Rosie and Boris. Boris didn't say anything, but Rosie obviously couldn't take it. You called me over to explain things to her parents in person, and now that you've made up, you're just going to kick me aside? Santino didn't answer. It was as if he had silently admitted it. Watching the way he treated Rosie, I couldn't understand what the point of all this was. Rosie finally broke. Santino, you shouldn't treat me like this. Her whole body stiffened, the pride she once had faded, leaving only pale desperation in her voice. Santino, do you really not want me anymore? Santino didn't speak. He simply placed his hand lightly at my waist, half pulling me into his embrace. Rosie suddenly laughed. Then, calmly, she took out a piece of paper from her bag and handed it to me. It was a pregnancy test report. Her name, Rosie, was clearly printed on it. 1 month pregnant. About the night before last. Yeah, nothing really happened. Rosie stared straight at me, her smile deepening. But a month ago, you two had a fight. He went out drinking. My mind exploded with a loud buzz. Stiffly, I turned my head. Santino was staring at the paper, his face turning deathly pale. Chapter 12. At that moment, it felt as if soaked cotton was lodged in my throat, then slowly turned into sharp steel rods, piercing inward, making it hard even to breathe. His reaction had already said everything. Grace, Santino's eyes were faintly red. Looking at his face, wanting to explain, yet unable to refute anything, I could clearly feel something inside me fading away, bit by bit, until in the end, all that remained was disgust. Santino, no one is forcing you to forget her. You could have stayed loyal in your own emotional world from beginning to end, but why did you have to drag me into this? I drank a lot that night. He was still trying to explain. I cut him off coldly. Don't give me that nonsense about it being an accident, or that you mistook her for me. You don't even have the courage to admit it. That just makes me look down on you even more. Santino's face turned deathly pale as he stood frozen in place. After my grandmother passed away, Santino had been the person who treated me the best. Or maybe, it was my own longing and attachment that magnified that goodness infinitely. But did that mean that just because I lacked love, I deserved to be hurt? Did it mean I didn't deserve a clean, wholehearted love? After a long silence, Santino finally spoke softly. I'm sorry. The room was dimly lit. He turned around and walked toward the door, step by step. When his figure completely disappeared, Rosie looked at me and smiled smugly, her beautiful face full of arrogance. Now do you understand? You'll never win against me. I looked at her, speechless. For a moment, I couldn't help but wonder, was she really Santino's college classmate? Or rather, did she even go to college with that brain of hers? Before I could say anything, a low voice came from behind me. If you're 1 month pregnant, then for the child's future, I'd suggest getting a CT scan and an MRI as soon as possible. Rosie frowned. What do you mean? Boris spoke calmly, unhurried. When there's a functional disorder in the brain, only through proper examination can you determine the nature of the condition and whether there's a genetic risk. I froze for a moment, then burst out laughing. Rosie reacted as well. Damn, are you saying there's something wrong with my brain? Boris didn't deny it. Even if it can't be cured, you should still seek treatment actively. Rosie stormed off in anger. As she left, she kept cursing under her breath, just like some other person's little dog losing an argument to my roundie. I laughed so hard I couldn't recover for quite a while. When I turned around, I realized Boris had been watching me the whole time. Seeing me look back, he remained calm. Get some rest. I've completed the task Alicia gave me. It's time for me to go. I walked to the balcony and watched his car disappear from view, slowly letting out a breath. As soon as I returned to the room, Alicia called. Rosie is pregnant? I froze for a moment, then told her everything that had just happened. At the end, I couldn't help but praise Boris's savage comeback, but Alicia seemed to catch something off. Huh? My brother went to your place? Didn't he say he had something to do at the company? Chapter 13. After that day, I moved in with Alicia temporarily, planning to find my own place before moving out. The things I left at Santino's, I'd go back for them another time. Boris had gone abroad for business and wouldn't be back for at least a month. That was exactly why I didn't refuse Alicia's kindness. Over the past few days, my parents had called me several times, but I didn't answer. Santino didn't try to contact me either. From Alicia, I heard that Rosie had already moved into Santino's mother's house, taking care of her attentively. But no matter how much his mother tried to persuade him, Santino hadn't gone back even once. But none of that had anything to do with me anymore. That day, to celebrate me finding a new place, Alicia and I decided to try ice skating. When we arrived at the rink, it was still early, so there weren't many people, perfect for learning. Alicia might seem bold on the surface, but the moment she stepped onto the ice, she clung tightly to the railing, her lips trembling. "No way. I'm still scared of falling. You go ahead first." Once I mentally prepare myself, "I'll come find you." I had no choice but to move along the railing on my own, step by step. My sense of balance wasn't great, so I didn't really know how to skate. The last time I came here was also my first time. After about half an hour, I let go of the railing and slowly stood up. Suddenly, someone skated past me at high speed. Caught off guard, I lost my balance and was about to fall. "Careful." A low, familiar voice sounded by my ear. A hand landed on my waist, steadying me firmly. I looked up and met those dark eyes. I froze. I hadn't expected it to be Boris. He must have just gotten off the plane, dressed in a black trench coat. His figure looked tall and sharp. The moment I landed, Alicia texted me. She said you two were here skating and asked me to come pick you up. Boris explained his sudden appearance. "You still don't know how to skate?" I casually hummed in response, then suddenly caught something. "Still?" But Boris didn't elaborate. He let go of my waist. The moment he did, I instinctively grabbed the railing again, as if losing my sense of security. Boris fell silent for a few seconds, then let out a low laugh. After laughing enough, he slowly took off his coat, draped it over the railing, and lightly tapped it with his fingers. "Want me to teach you?" His voice wasn't as cool and distant as usual, it carried a relaxed warmth. His laughter made my cheeks heat up, and an inexplicable competitive spirit rose in me. I didn't refuse. Instead, I said openly, "Then I'll be counting on you." If it weren't for this skating session, I wouldn't have known Boris had such patience. He slowed everything down, patiently explaining how to move, what techniques to use. Aside from the one time I accidentally fell into him when his body stiffened for a brief moment, he remained completely at ease. After skating for a while, I realized I was falling less and less. Excited, I turned my head. "I think I've got it." Boris looked at me steadily, a smile in his voice. You've graduated." His eyes were bright, deep, like a pool of calm, clear water. He usually looked at people with a detached gaze, but now there was something more in them. I couldn't help but pause for a moment. After leaving the rink, Alicia was suddenly called back to the company to revise a proposal, so it was just Boris and me in the car. I thought he would say something, but he didn't. He simply focused on driving. Just as I started to wonder if I had been overthinking things, Boris pulled the car over. "Actually, I kind of regret it." I blinked, slightly confused. "Huh?" At the time, Alicia called me many times, saying you couldn't get a ride and asking me to pick you up. But I missed all her calls because I was busy with a project. And then, Alicia had called Santino. Boris turned his head and looked at me. "Actually, the first time I ever saw you was right here, at this ice rink." Chapter 14. 3 years ago, I had indeed come here once. My dad brought my 6-year-old sister to skate and took me along. At that time, you seemed to be here with your family. Your dad was teaching your little sister how to skate, and you were just quietly holding onto the railing, watching from the side. Later, you tried letting go of the railing to skate on your own, but you couldn't get the hang of it, so you went to ask your dad for help, but he seemed busy, standing with his back to you, talking on the phone. I clenched my hand slightly. That distant memory gradually became clearer under his narration. Then your sister was suddenly bumped into by someone. You instinctively skated over and acted as a human cushion for her. Boris paused. His voice grew slightly heavier. But your dad thought you were the one who made her fall. He scolded you harshly, then carried your sister away, leaving you there alone. Boris glanced at me and let out a soft sigh. I thought you would cry out of grievance, but you were very calm, as if you were already used to it. That entire afternoon, you practiced skating alone. You fell many times, but you didn't make a sound, until one fall was particularly bad, and tears overflowed from the corner of your eyes, just a physiological reaction. Even then, you only blankly touched her face, and then smiled faintly. That's when I realized you weren't unhurt. And it wasn't that you didn't want to cry, you just couldn't. You were trying to make yourself cry, you were trying to save yourself. Boris looked at me steadily and said in a low voice. That was the first time I ever felt heartache for a girl I didn't even know. I froze for a long moment before finally speaking. When I got home, my dad apologized. He said that while returning the skates, someone told him my sister wasn't pushed by me. Later, to make up for it, he bought me a very expensive pair of skates. But I never went skating again after that. Realizing something, before I could even ask, Boris answered. That person was me. I was the one who told your dad. My heart skipped a beat. Boris looked at me. After that missed chance, the next time I saw you, you were already with Santino. After getting out of the car, I was still in a daze and almost tripped over a stone. Boris caught me by the waist again. Naturally, almost habitually, his tone calm. Watch your step. I didn't watch my step. I looked at him. I opened my mouth, about to say something, when a familiar voice came from behind. Grace. Chapter 15. Santino stood under the tree. In the pale moonlight, his face looked blurred, making it hard to read his expression. When he walked closer, I realized he had lost quite a bit of weight over the past month. There was a faint exhaustion in his features. The moment I spoke, my tone carried sarcasm. Shouldn't you be taking care of the one at your house? What are you doing here? Santino seemed not to hear me. His gaze lingered between Boris and me. His voice strained to the extreme. You're being so close with him. How far have you two gone? The questioning tone made me wonder if I had misheard him. Santino, I need to remind you, we no longer have anything to do with each other. He froze for a moment, his expression turning awkward. Sorry, I didn't want to say anything more to him. I turned and started walking away. Rosie isn't pregnant. That single sentence stopped me in my tracks. I turned my head slightly. What did you say? Santino looked at me, his Adam's apple bobbing. That pregnancy report wasn't hers. She has a friend around her age who's also named Rosie. And she got pregnant recently. Rosie stole her test report. I was stunned for a moment. Subconsciously, I looked at Boris, who happened to be looking at me too. From each other's eyes, we seemed to read the same thought. Rosie might actually have something seriously wrong with her. Yesterday, I had a huge argument with Rosie. She told me everything, including that night I got drunk. The next morning, I couldn't remember anything. But in fact, nothing really happened between us. Before Santino could finish, Boris let out a faint, emotionless chuckle. So as long as it didn't reach the final step, it doesn't count as anything happening? If a butcher slaughters a pig, plucks it, cleans it, but doesn't end up eating the meat, does that mean nothing was done to the pig? As he spoke, Santino's face grew increasingly ugly. Boris added calmly, just an analogy. After a long silence, Santino turned to look at me. Grace. He called my name. No matter what I say or do now, you won't forgive me, will you? I didn't hesitate. No. Santino froze completely, murmuring, but Rosie isn't pregnant. She's gone. The problem between us is solved. Back then, you were clearly so close to forgiving me. I stayed silent for a moment, then suddenly cut him off. Do you remember that broken watch in your drawer? He paused, then nodded hesitantly. You couldn't bear to throw it away. You told me it was from a relative, but it was actually from Rosie, wasn't it? I asked softly. Do you know how I found out? His lips trembled, but no words came out. The day of your class reunion, Rosie sent me an old photo of you two. It was a couple's watch, wasn't it? The expression on Santino's face froze. I smiled faintly. The one who hurt me was never her. It was you, the one who kept giving her chances to hurt me again and again. Santino's already reddened eyes turned completely bloodshot. Looking at his pale face, I said softly, I never want to see you again. Chapter 16, Epilogue. After that day, Santino never appeared in front of me again. After I moved, Alicia often came over to stay at my place, saying she had gotten used to sleeping with me. Every night, Boris would video call her. After chatting for a bit, he would very naturally shift the conversation to me sitting beside her. Over time, I even started to feel like I was the one talking to Boris every night. On weekends, the three of us would often go hiking, but Alicia would always back out at the last minute, complaining about being tired. So every time, it ended up being just Boris and me. Of course, I knew Alicia was creating opportunities for us, and I knew I didn't reject Boris, but to truly accept him, I wasn't ready yet. Until one day, Alicia couldn't stand it anymore and brought me Boris's notebook. It was called a diary, but it didn't really record events. And yet, it was written in every single day. More precisely, ever since we met again, and he found out that he had missed Alicia's calls that day because of his project. Every day, he wrote the same sentence on paper. I won the project, but lost my wife. Just a few words, but they pressed deep into the page, each stroke heavy with emotion. I was stunned. It wasn't until Boris walked in, slightly flustered, and took the notebook from my hands that I snapped back to reality. He covered his lips and coughed lightly, pretending to be calm, but his ears were red as if they might burn. Just scribbling for fun. My heart had been a tangled mess, but seeing him like this, I couldn't help but laugh. It felt like the clouds had parted, every knot, every lingering attachment dissolved in an instant. I had always lacked a sense of security. What I wanted was a love that was pure, wholehearted. And now, wasn't that person right in front of me? Thinking this, I took a deep breath and gestured for Boris to give me the notebook. Though confused, he handed it over obediently. I leaned slightly forward, opened it, took a pen from the holder, and carefully crossed out the first few words. Then I stood up, met his gaze, and pointed at the remaining word. Read it. Boris paused for a moment, then smiled. Wife. My face flushed slightly. Boris' side story. Chapter 1. In the third year of being with Grace, on her birthday, we registered our marriage, walking out of the Civil Affairs Bureau. I held the marriage certificate up in the air. The red stamp on it was strikingly bright. My eyes felt as if they had been burned red too. My body was stiff. I couldn't recover for a long while. Grace smiled. That happy? I looked at her. She looked back at me, a soft smile on her lips. Her face was bathed in gentle sunlight, calmer than 3 years ago, more graceful, so beautiful she looked like a silhouette painting. This was Grace now, my Grace. I wrapped an arm around her waist and pulled her close. When she shyly glanced around, I let out a low laugh. A wish fulfilled. I'm very happy. No one knew how much I liked her, or how long I had liked her. Grace didn't know either. That night, Alicia came over to celebrate Grace's birthday with us. After dinner, Grace told her about our marriage registration. Alicia was already quite drunk when she heard the news. Her eyes reddened with excitement, but then she suddenly put on a stern face. She unsteadily dragged a stool over, pulled Grace to sit down, and positioned herself across from me like she was conducting an interrogation. Will you treat Grace well for the rest of your life? I raised an eyebrow. Of course. Alicia glanced at Grace, holding back a smile as she continued seriously. Don't answer too quickly. What if one day your ex suddenly shows up? I cut her off. I don't have an ex. Oh right. Alicia hiccuped. You don't even have female friends. Last question. She stared straight at me, her expression turning serious. Why do you like Grace? Was it just because of that one encounter at the ice rink? You didn't even speak to each other back then. Is that really enough to make you think about her for 3 years? I paused slightly and turned my head to look at Grace. She still looked calm, but her fingers were lightly tapping on the table, a small habit she had whenever she was nervous. Clearly, she was curious too. Chapter 2. The first time I saw Grace wasn't actually at the ice rink. When I was very young, I was once kidnapped. The person who took me was my biological mother. At the time, she wrapped my face with a headscarf, held me tightly in her arms, and took me onto a long-distance bus. The road was mountainous, the ride rough and bumpy. Half asleep, I seemed to feel large tears falling onto my face. Boris, don't blame me. If you have to blame someone, blame your father. He's the one who wronged us. After 3 days and 3 nights on the bus, and a long journey through mountain paths, we arrived at a very remote village. She said she didn't even know where we were. That way, my father would never be able to find us. After settling down, my mother would lock me alone inside the house. At night, she would come back drunk. She hated looking into my eyes, because whenever she saw me, she would think of my father, then lose control, beating me, choking me. That time, I was beaten until I lay on the ground, unable to move. She panicked, knelt beside me, and held me as she cried. From her incoherent words, I finally learned everything. My father's first wife couldn't have children. They had made an agreement. My father would marry another woman, have a child, and then remarry his first wife. My mother was that unfortunate woman. She was deceived by my father in the name of love, gave birth to his child, quit her job to become a housewife, and was then ruthlessly abandoned. What broke her the most was that my father had never loved her. After remarrying his first wife, he immediately had a vasectomy, as if to promise that his marriage with my mother had only been a mistake, and a mistake that would never happen again. So my mother completely lost her mind. She took me away, his only child. She wanted my father to suffer for the rest of his life. After that incident, she seemed to grow afraid. She stopped locking me in the house. She stopped beating me, but she came home later and later each night. Every time, I would go out to look for her and bring her back, drunk and unconscious. One time, when I went to find her, a storm broke out. The road was narrow, everything around me dark. I missed my step and fell into a pond. I shouted for help, calling for my mom, for my dad, but no matter how hard I screamed, my voice dissolved into the cold water like the faint buzzing of a fly. Before I lost consciousness, I don't know if it was my imagination, but I thought I saw a flash of red clothing. When I woke up again, I found myself lying on a clean bed, not at home. "You're awake?" Startled by the sudden voice, I turned my head slightly and met a pair of bright eyes. That was the very first time I met Grace. Chapter 3. Grace gently placed a towel on my forehead. The coolness immediately eased the pain there. Her grandmother walked over with a bowl of porridge. She told me that, luckily, when Grace passed by the pond, she noticed someone in the water and quickly ran to find nearby people to rescue me. I paused for a moment, then looked into Grace's eyes and said seriously, "Thank you." Her face flushed red, clearly embarrassed. "And no need to thank me." I glanced at the clock on the wall. It was already 11. I didn't know if my mother had gone back yet. Grace asked me many questions. "Why did you fall into the pond?" "I was out looking for my mom." "Oh." She scratched her head, then picked up the bowl of porridge. "Are you hungry? My grandma's lean pork porridge is really delicious." "I'm not hungry." She quietly put the porridge down. After a moment of silence, she asked again, "What's your name? Why have I never seen you before?" I didn't answer that question. If I gave my name so easily, and my father somehow found me, I didn't know what my mother would have to face. She had already been hurt once by him. I couldn't let her be hurt again because of me. After staying a while longer, when my headache eased, I left. From behind me, I faintly heard Grace's voice. "We're friends now. You can come find me to play anytime." Chapter 4. After becoming friends with Grace, I realized she really didn't have many friends, because she came to find me far too often. After she visited my home once, she was clearly shocked by how bare it was. Knowing that I cooked for myself, she often brought me rice, salt, oil, vegetables grown by her grandmother, or simply dragged me to her house to eat. One time, I mentioned this to her. She explained that it was because there were too few kids her age in the village. I asked her why. She said the place was too remote, and there were very few teachers at the school, so the other kids' parents had taken them to the city. I casually asked, "Then why didn't your parents take you to the city too?" She fell silent, her eyes slightly reddening. I immediately realized I had said something wrong. Just as I was about to speak, I heard her say, "Because my parents need to make money. Otherwise, how could they afford to raise me?" As if afraid I wouldn't believe her, she added, "Even though they can't come back, they send me lots of pretty clothes, toy boxes, and extracurricular books every month." Looking at her slightly evasive eyes, I parted my lips. But in the end, I said nothing. Chapter 5. After that day, aside from bringing me vegetables, Grace also started bringing me school supplies and extracurricular books, saying they were all bought by her parents and that she would share them with me from now on. It was as if she wanted to prove, through actions, that her parents loved her. Meanwhile, my mother came home later and later every day. Sometimes, she didn't come home at all. People in the village began to gossip. At that time, Grace and I were sitting under the banyan tree reading. The filthy rumors drifted into my ears. Before I could react, Grace suddenly stood up, pointing angrily at them. My grandma says only idle people gossip. If you adults have nothing to do, why don't you go read a book? You're worse than us kids. Back at my house, she was still fuming, her brows tightly furrowed, fists clenched. Something in my heart stirred slightly. And then, my mother pushed the door open. She leaned against the doorframe, exhausted, her whole body reeking of alcohol. This was the first time Grace had seen her. She froze for a moment, then cautiously said, "Auntie, I'm his friend." My mother's eyelashes trembled as she looked up at us. "Friend?" Her gaze lingered between us. Suddenly, she laughed. "Even like this, you can still make friends? Just like your father." She enunciated each word slowly. Smooth, sweet talk. That familiar anger and disgust gathered in her eyes. My heart sank. I wanted to tell Grace to leave, but before I could, my mother grabbed a cup from the table and hurled it at me. I instinctively shut my eyes. The cup shattered with a loud bang, but the expected pain never came. When I opened my eyes, I saw Grace standing in front of me, shielding me. A thin layer of cold sweat covered her forehead, yet she smiled and told me she was fine. At that moment, I couldn't describe what I felt. As I helped Grace out of the house, I glanced back at my mother. I think that look must have hurt her deeply, because her expression changed instantly, and her lips trembled slightly. We walked in silence the entire way. From time to time, Grace stole glances at me. After hesitating for a long time, she finally said, "I'm really fine. When I used to do something wrong, my grandma would hit me too. It hurt way more than this." I stopped and looked at her. "But you didn't do anything wrong just now." Grace fell silent for a moment. "But neither did you, right?" I froze. Grace smiled, looking into my eyes, speaking word by word. "So you don't need to feel guilty toward me." Chapter 6. After that, Grace and I grew closer and closer. We would sit under the banyan tree reading together, go pick vegetables in the fields, or help her grandmother with chores. Sometimes, she would even complain that I had started talking too much. One day, her grandmother brought back an injured puppy she had found. Grace and I bathed it together and treated its wounds. I even gave it a name, Roundy. I told Grace it was because its eyes were round and adorable, very much like hers. Of course, I didn't say that last part out loud. That day, she brought me to the banyan tree. Using a small shovel, she dug a hole in the ground. Unexpectedly, there was a small box buried inside. She took it out, brushed off the dirt, and unlocked it with a key. My grandma told me that if you write your wish on a piece of paper and bury it in the ground, the earth god underground will see it and help make it come true. Looking at her sparkling eyes, I couldn't bring myself to say something like, "Your grandma is lying. There's no such thing as an earth god." She handed me a pen and a piece of paper, then covered her eyes with her hands. "You write it." "I won't look." I raised an eyebrow, took the pen and paper, thought for a moment, and wrote, "I hope all of Grace's wishes come true." After placing it inside, I glanced at the box out of the corner of my eye. There were countless slips of paper inside. 2 of them weren't folded properly, and I could vaguely read the words. "I hope Grandma stays healthy. I hope my parents come to take me home." Lost in thought, I heard Grace's voice beside me. "I think every mother loves her child." That day, your mom was drunk. She probably didn't mean it. You can wish for her to drink less. The earth god will definitely make it come true. Last time my grandma was sick, I made a wish, and she got better the very next day. Isn't that amazing? But, she suddenly lowered her gaze, her voice turning softer. "Sometimes the earth god makes mistakes. If a wish doesn't come true once in a while, we shouldn't blame him." Something in my chest tightened. I took her hand and said slowly, firmly, The Earth God won't miss a single wish. Even if not now, one day, it will come true. She looked at me blankly. Something flickered in her eyes, and then she turned her face away slightly. Chapter 7. Just when I thought life would continue peacefully like that, my father found me. Ignoring my struggle, he dragged me into his car, started the engine, and drove away. In my hand, I was still holding a bamboo dragonfly I had just made, planning to give it to Grace. Just one more turn, and I would have reached her house. After returning home, I went on a hunger strike. I wanted to go back. My father stubbed out his cigarette, both distressed and angry. Look at how thin you've gotten this past month. Why are you still thinking about that heartless mother of yours? Hearing that, I froze for a moment. Only a month had passed? But I knew. The reason I wanted to go back wasn't just because of my mother. It was also because of her. Later, my father told me, my mother had called him herself. She was getting married, so she was letting me go. What did I feel at that moment? There was no relief. Only pain, spreading endlessly, so suffocating it felt like I couldn't breathe. She wasn't letting me go. She simply didn't want me anymore. During that time, I tried every way I could to go back, but I was too young. I had no way to fight against my father. Just as I was about to give up, my father's wife got pregnant. How ridiculous. How absurd. They had schemed a marriage under false pretenses and hurt my mother. They were the root of everything. One of them was infertile. The other had undergone sterilization. The chance of pregnancy was almost non-existent. And yet, it happened. After my younger brother was born, my father's wife grew increasingly displeased with me. She argued with my father constantly. Gradually, even the way my father looked at me became filled with impatience. A friend of my father's, who had settled abroad, had been married for years without children. My father's wife suggested giving me up for adoption to him. My father agreed. Before leaving the country, I made one request. I wanted to return to that small, remote village where my mother had taken me, to find someone, at the very least, to tell her my name. My name is Boris. Grace. My name is Boris. Chapter 8. When I went back, I learned that just a few days earlier, Grace had been taken away by her father. For a moment, I didn't know how to react. Was I happy for her? Yes. After all, that wish of hers, the one that had never come true, had finally been fulfilled. And yet, there was a feeling I couldn't quite describe. She had been taken away just a few days earlier. I stood outside her courtyard for an entire night. It felt as if something inside me had been lost, leaving behind a hollow emptiness. Years passed. My adoptive father married Alicia's mother, and we planned to return to our home country. Alicia's mother was a very gentle woman. She ran a dessert shop, often baking cakes for me. She treated Alicia and me equally. For some reason, I suddenly thought of what my mother used to be like before the divorce. She would hold me and sing, tell me stories, make desserts for me. Her eyes had always been gentle, like still water. One day, by chance, I ran into my mother on the street. She was holding hands with her husband and their daughter as they walked into an ice rink. Her daughter was very cute, her features somewhat resembled mine, and my mother gently supported her, patiently teaching her how to skate. It felt as if everyone had returned to their proper place. No more sadness, no more pain. Everyone, except me. In a moment of distraction, I thought I saw Grace. I assumed it was just my imagination, but after looking again and again, it was really her. Even after nearly 10 years, the moment I saw her again, my heart trembled with a strange emotion. After she had been taken away by her father, her life didn't seem to have gone well. I watched as she was misunderstood by him. I watched him storm off angrily. I watched her skate expressionlessly, falling over and over again. In the end, I couldn't hold back anymore. I walked toward the exit and, when her father was returning the skates, I told him that it wasn't her who pushed her sister. When I went back, she was already gone. Later, Alicia went hiking with her best friend. They couldn't get a ride back, so she called me to pick them up, but I missed the call because I was busy with a project. After some time, due to work, I moved to another neighborhood. One evening, while taking a walk, I suddenly heard a faint, Weak bark. I looked up and saw a man walking toward me, holding a dog in his arms. He was moving quickly, his expression unnatural. The dog's eyes were dark and round. My heart tightened. Just as I was about to step forward, a man in sportswear rushed past me, snatched the dog from him. As we brushed past each other, I recognized him. He was Alicia's friend. I had seen him a few times before. His name seemed to be Santino. The next time I saw her, she was already with Santino, and she didn't seem to recognize me. The way she looked at me was unfamiliar. I had never known that she was Alicia's best friend. Between her and me, it always felt like we were getting closer, yet always missing each other. Every night after that, I would think of her. Maybe nighttime is when emotions surface the most. Everything becomes direct, intense, impossible to escape. The bamboo dragonfly I never gave her, the name I never got to tell her, that encounter at the ice rink, that missed call, that constant sense of almost having, yet always losing, that longing to hold on, forced me to finally face my feelings. I like Grace. I like her very, very much. No, I love her. Chapter 9. And everything that happened after that, you already know. It was a long story. Alicia hadn't even finished listening before she fell asleep on the table. She had drunk too much tonight. Whether she would even remember any of this tomorrow was uncertain. So, I was telling it for Grace. Her shoulders trembled slightly. Those reddened eyes stared straight at me. And in them, there was only me. Why didn't you tell me before? I was silent for a moment, then smiled faintly. I was afraid you'd pretend to forget, and also afraid you really didn't remember. And at the same time, I hoped that you would remember on your own. I'm sorry. I wasn't pretending. I really. Her eyes grew redder and redder, tears falling one after another, and just like that, my heart began to ache again. I gently pulled her hands away from her face, wrapped my arms around her, and lowered my head, kissing away her tears one by one. She lifted her chin and kissed me. It was an incredibly gentle, tender, yet intense kiss, tinged with the faint saltiness of tears. When I carried her upstairs, she clutched my collar, her warm breath brushing against my neck. Her voice trembled, yet remained firm. Husband, I'll make it up to you. After saying that, she buried her face into my neck. I lowered my gaze slightly and could only see the tips of her ears, flushed red. I paused for a moment, then let out a soft laugh. After all, it was just a short month from our youth. What kind of fool would remember it for so many years? I wouldn't blame her, though. This way of making it up wasn't bad either.